The water crisis in South Africa isn't going anywhere. Some regions in the country have lacked continued progress when it comes to accessing water. Most people affected live in rural communities, but there are a number of factors that contribute to accessing water. To discuss this, we are joined by the Director General of the Water and Sanitation Department, Dr. Phillips. Thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it. Perhaps just tell us about this worrying concern that not everybody has access to water. If I'm not mistaken, it's a few billion that still don't have access to water. It's 3.6 billion people that still lack safely managed sanitation, and 2 billion people still lack safely managed drinking water. Why is this still happening in 2022?
Hi, Heidi, and good afternoon. Good afternoon to your listeners. Those billions of people that you're talking about are global figures, not figures in South Africa. It's still happening because there's a number of challenges around the world which we also experience in South Africa, which need to be addressed in order for everyone to get access to water. And those challenges are exacerbated by climate change, which is making water more scarce and increasing the need for us to use our scarce fresh water, clean water resources carefully. So some of the challenges that we have in South Africa is that we are struggling to distribute and maintain water at municipal level in terms of our constitution. Distribution of clean water and provision of sanitation is a municipal function, but many of our municipalities are struggling. And that's probably our biggest challenge at the moment in South Africa in terms of providing everybody with access to clean water and dignified sanitation.
I want you to perhaps go a little bit deeper when you speak about municipalities and how they struggle, because there's an article that's been written that speaks about the number of issues that contribute to the lack of access to water for a number of areas, and they attribute it to the fact that not all municipalities are equal when it comes to local governments, and there are stark differences with distribution of water from, for example, a municipality in Limpopo to a municipality in Gauteng or in KZN. Why is that not being sorted out?
Well, Heidi, I think what differentiates municipalities which are doing well in terms of water provision and those that are struggling is good governance. Even in Gauteng, there are some municipalities like Mfuleni, for example, where there's currently a national intervention which is struggling to maintain and operate its wastewater treatment works. Government has got a financial system in place where there is money provided to municipalities in poor areas with high levels of unemployment and poverty to subsidize those municipalities to provide a basic level or basic amount of free water to their indigent citizens. But essentially, municipalities need to run the water and sanitation services as a business. I don't mean they need to privatize it. I mean that they need to collect enough revenue to cover their maintenance and operation costs. Water can't, on an ongoing basis, be subsidized. Someone has to pay for it. Someone has to pay for the cost of treating the water and distributing the water and managing the infrastructure which is used to distribute the water. So those municipalities that are doing better are collecting enough revenue to do adequate maintenance and operation of their water infrastructure. Those municipalities which are struggling the root cause of why they're struggling is due to weaknesses with governance, which means that they are not doing proper billing and revenue collection, and then they're not prioritizing the required maintenance and operation work on their water and sanitation systems to make it function properly.
For areas, for example, in rural Limpopo or rural KwaZulu-Natal or in the Eastern Cape that have never seen a tap or have never seen water coming out of a tap, would you say that's also because of a governance crisis?
Well, it's because of partly because of the historical backlogs that we've experienced from apartheid, and that many of the previously disadvantaged areas, particularly in rural areas, didn't have water when we got democracy in 1994. Since then, the national government has been allocating billions of rand in grant money, which is given to municipalities to enable them to provide access to those communities. After 1994, we made a great deal of progress in terms of providing access to communities which didn't have water before. From 1994 up until about 2000, 2005, we reduced the backlog of people who didn't have access to the minimum standard of water provision that was put in the RDP from about 30% of the population who didn't have access to less than 10% of the population which didn't have access. However, unfortunately, since then, due to weaknesses with maintenance and operation of the infrastructure, the reliability of the water service has decreased and is continuing to decrease. In other words, we've made good progress with this grant finance from the national government to put in place infrastructure which has enabled water to be provided to communities which didn't have water under apartheid. But due to weak maintenance and operation in some municipalities, water isn't consistently coming out of that infrastructure. So sometimes when people turn on the tap, water doesn't come out, or the quality of water that comes out isn't as it should be because of weaknesses with the management of the wastewater treatment works or the water treatment works. The government is continuing to allocate grant money to municipalities to address the backlogs. We allocate several billion rand per annum through the regional bulk infrastructure grant, the water services infrastructure grant, and the municipal infrastructure grant to assist municipalities to address the remaining backlogs. But increasingly, our bigger challenge is becoming improving reliability and improving the maintenance and management and operation of the existing infrastructure.
Sorry, Doctor, I have two more questions and I'm running out of time, but I want to ask you, you've spoken about the allocation of funds and grants and how much money is being allocated to actually deal with this crisis, but there's also a concern about mismanagement of funds and corruption. I don't know why anybody would want to be corrupt in the Department of Water and Sanitation, because this is a basic service and it really disadvantages many communities, but that is also possibly a concern. Perhaps you can tell us how this is also a major setback in getting water to these various communities and just adds to the water crisis in this country.
I agree with you absolutely, Heidi. It's one of the major challenges, and it's one of the most important elements of the weaknesses in governance at municipal level. At national level, we have also had challenges with corruption. The Department of Water and Sanitation suffered during the state capture period, and we have a number of investigations into some of our projects being undertaken by the SIU and by the Hawks and by the police, which we are cooperating with. And under the leadership of Minister Mchunu, we are taking a zero tolerance policy towards corruption in the department, in our entities, the water boards and other entities which fall directly under the department. At municipal level, corruption is a major cause of the weak governance and poor operation and maintenance. One of the reasons why there isn't enough money for maintenance of water infrastructure at municipal level is that the money isn't being used properly and is sometimes being taken fraudulently or corruptly for other purposes. So I couldn't agree with you more, Heidi. It's a major challenge and something that we all need to work together as South Africans to address. We need to turn around the culture of corruption that has developed in our country, and we need to develop a new ethics where everybody takes the attitude that you just talked about, where it's completely unacceptable and completely unethical to take money that's meant to provide basic water and sanitation services to people who don't have them for yourself or for your friends for corrupt purposes.
It makes me so angry. It's actually heartbreaking, because last year during the local government elections when we went to Limpopo, people there don't know how a tap is with running water coming out of it because of that Guyani water project where millions of rands was looted and stolen. It's shocking. I just have one last question, Dr. Phillips, about whether or not as South Africans we should be worried, because you've mentioned climate change, you've mentioned government issues, you've mentioned corruption and mismanagement of funds, and I, as an ordinary South African listening to this, I'm thinking, if I turn my tap on in the next couple of years, am I going to have water issues? Already now in Gauteng, we are hearing about burst water pipes, and it just seems as though the picture is getting worse and worse. Should we be worried?
Heidi, I think we should be worried in the sense that we need to deal as a country with some of the challenges that we have, such as corruption. But as far as water provision is concerned, there's a lot that's being done. We have a number of major projects underway around the country to increase the supply of water. For example, the Lesotho Highlands Phase 2 is being implemented. There's going to be major announcements around the award of major tenders for that to build a new dam there in Lesotho, which is going to put a lot more water into the Vaal River system, which provides water for Gauteng. So that's going to mean that Gauteng will have enough water for the foreseeable future, and that water won't be a constraint to economic growth in the future in Gauteng. We have similar projects in all over the country. But we need to do much more than that. We mustn't just build new supply infrastructure. We need to address the key challenges at municipal level as well. There's no point in us spending billions on putting in place new water resource infrastructure if 40 to 50% of that water is lost through leaks in municipal water distribution system. It's a huge waste of money. So we're going to be focusing on all of these areas. We're going to be collaborating with the private sector, bringing in private sector finance and expertise to assist us. If we continue on the track that we're doing, then that we're on, and if we can address the governance problems and reduce corruption at municipal level, then I'm confident that we don't need to worry that we will have water security in our country in future.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time and for all your hard work. I know it's rather challenging, so thank you so much for speaking to us and trying to make sure that we have access to water. That was the Director General of the Water and Sanitation Department, Dr. Phillips.